Welcome to the Long Take Review, where four college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Sobchak-Bankard, and I'm here with only one other driver today. When he looks in the mirror, he sees this rough and tumbled old school cowboy. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
Vroom, 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 vroom.
Greg, you already used this bit when we did
Now, Jen,
Furiosa.
you might say that is a bit formulaic and was already used in a Tom Cruise movie. But I'll tell you what, Jen, it's right on point for tonight's program.
Touche. So, listeners, that will make more sense in a little bit. Those were all references to the film we are here to review today, F1 the movie. I don't think it was always called F1 the movie, but that's apparently what we're supposed to call it now. And that's in theaters now. Greg and I actually got to go see an early preview screening, not because we're special in any way, but because they had a fan first, one of those kind of like early to create early buzz screenings. And so we managed to both go to that. So that's why we're able to review this. We're recording June 25th. It's a Wednesday night. But by the time you hear this, the movie will be out in theaters. Just to give you a little plot premise, this is brought to us by the director of Top Gun Maverick, Joseph Kosinski, and F1 stars Brad Pitt as Sonny Hayes, a hotshot turned has-been race car driver returning to Formula One after nearly 3 decades away. And the rest of the cast includes Kerry Condon, Javier Bardem, Damson Idris, Tobias Menzies, and Sarah Niles. There's a bunch of people I'm leaving out. This was a very like a who's who of like, oh, I've seen that person on a TV show.
Very much so.
Which we can talk about. Yeah. But if you're listening to us for the first time, we will have a spoiler-free section designed for those of you who have not seen the film. And then with a very clear alert, we will shift into spoiler mode for the rest of the show. Greg, if listeners think we're Grand Prix winners after listening to this episode, what can they do?
If listeners don't want to give us the checkered flag, then they should follow the Long Take Review wherever they get their podcasts. We host the feed on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, which remains on this list because that's where PT and I listen to podcasts, and wherever else you get your fine podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram and Threads at The Long Take Review and on Letterboxd at LTRpod. And there's so much good social media content. Follow us those places.
All right. Thanks, Greg. So we are just about ready to get into our discussion of F1. But we actually, for the first time in a while, have a very, very quick movie news update.
Just in off the wire, it's your Hollywood news.
Oh, I'd missed that.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I know. I mean, when we're short on time, that's the first thing to go. So, but we have really huge news. I think PT is the one who dropped this in our text thread earlier today. Greg, what's the news? What's the scuttlebutt?
The news is that the long gesticulating, long rumored Bond project, Bond 26, has gotten its director, and it's some guy, Denis Villeneuve. Is that how you say it, Jen?
Rude. First of all, yes. So this news actually surprised me because I feel like we've been getting so many news stories that were like, and this big director might be doing it. And this big director, like it really felt like they listed everybody who's a big name in the industry right now. So, I mean, what was your initial reaction to this, Greg? Like, how do you feel about it?
I think it was surprise, like you said, and yeah, Berger. I had heard most recently, hot off that Conclave vibe, coming in to do this, perhaps. And I also happened to, this morning when you're scrolling Instagram like you do, I happened upon some like garbage movie news site that had a paparazzi shot of Anya Taylor-Joy coming out of an LA coffee shop with her copy of Dune under her arm because she's been doing the homework. I was like, oh man, I'm so excited for Dune 3. I can't wait. And so this really struck me as like a huge surprise because I think it remains true that Denny is doing Dune 3 next. And, so it's going to be a little while before he does Dune, but, it is a good choice in my book. How did you feel about it, other than surprise and shock?
I have very mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, it's exciting. There was a time where I cared very, very much about the Bond franchise. Mostly when I was in
Mm.
college, it was like probably one of my favorite. It was probably second after Star Wars for a little while. Like it was, a big part of my movie fan formation. And so on the one hand, I'm excited because, there's a lot of doubt about the franchise being handed over, right? So for those of you who don't know, it's like the Broccolis, who have long shepherded this franchise, are sort of selling selling out, some might say, to Amazon, or they're just saying like, we pass it on to you, like we're retiring from producing. And so there's a lot of doubt surrounding like, what is Bond now going to look like in the future? Is it going to be any good? And this gives me hope, because it's like, if anyone is going to kind of force a unique perspective and maybe a new twist in a good way onto something that's very familiar, I think it will be Denis Villeneuve. And I've loved every film he's made that I've seen. And he has such a singular vision. It's hard to believe that they're just going to force him to ignore that when he
Mm.
makes these Bond movies. I don't know. But on the other hand, I'm also like worried for him, because I want him to keep making either Dune movies or cool other original movies. And he's not going to do that if he's roped to this franchise.
Yeah, I think that those are all really good points. My main fear about Amazon is less that they'll ruin the Bond movies, but more that they're going to spin up 15 from the world of James Bond, right? You're going to get Q's origin story and things like that. And that I think the streaming era has demonstrated that people are just not interested in that. See the very recent flop of From the World of John Wick Ballerina, which I had forgotten until I sat down to that movie. I was like, oh, right. There was also a John Wick TV show for the Continental that just, disappeared. Now, obviously, John Wick is not Bond. Bond is much longer. So I agree with you. And, I hate to say it, I really like original Denis Villeneuve movies too, right? And so the fact that he would come off of Dune and go right into another property, having also already done a Blade Runner movie, right? Like, it feels like I kind of don't want him stuck in franchise land. But, the quotes he gave are what they are always, but I believe them, which are, I've been a Bond movie since I was a little boy, and, I care a lot about this franchise. What do you make of the fact that this is only an announcement of a director? Why aren't they announcing Bond, which I'm sure is what everybody really cares about out in normie land?
Well, hopefully, first of all, this is such a fraught thing, because I feel like people both demanding fan casting, right? I've seen so much discourse on the internet about who people think should be the next Bond, and then who's going to be the next Bond. And there's rumors, and it's Aaron Taylor Johnson, but wouldn't Idris Elba be amazing? And oh, what about Dev Patel? Like, who probably would be my personal pick
Yeah.
if we could choose from someone who's on the rise, right? And would be and can do a British accent. Like, that's an important piece, right? But I feel like this, to me, signals that they're holding off on casting because they wanted to lock down the director and then let the director kind of take the lead on the casting, which, again, if we look at Dune, very well cast. So that's probably a good thing, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, but I imagine if it was ready, they would have done a big announcement with both. So it seems to me the paperwork's not done yet. I think my money right now is on Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's been very cagey as he's done press for 28 years later, which, again, if he's in I don't know where that movie is in the box office.
I think it's doing okay.
It's solid, but not. Yeah, I mean, it's a crowded market right now with a lot of family films, so you're not going to get that number one spot easily. But it feels to me like, again, while he's in a hit, cool, artsy movie, they'd say that if they could. I know we are both fans, though we sometimes lag a little behind on the other great British franchise, which is Doctor Who. And something I've loved about Doctor Who lately is they have gotten really bold in their casting of the Doctor. And unfortunately, that just means like a woman, whoa, a black man, whoa. And like it shouldn't be that dramatic, but there was a lot of pushback that the Doctor could never be anything other than a British man, right? A British white man. And so I see the Bond franchise in the exact same spot. And, I think Doctor Who faced a lot of pushback constantly with kind of diversifying their picks for Doctor. And I think Bond, it would be even more intense and even more gross. So my suspicion is Amazon, especially as they become kind of stewards of this property, are just going to play it incredibly safe.
Yeah.
And so Dev Patel would be fantastic. I think Idris has probably aged out of it, though he should have gotten it like 10 years ago, with all due respect to Mr. Craig. But it would be really fun if they went bold and surprised us all.
Yeah, that would be fun. And they if that's the case, they should make a huge deal and make a big spectacle out of it. So if that day comes, I will be there. I will be watching the live stream or whatever.
I was thinking of that. They've done those like 1 hour television specials for Doctor Who where they just have the new Doctor walk out in the last 5 minutes. They could totally do that.
They even did that for Wicked.
Decision.
So
that's right.
Yeah, on like NBC or something, right? All right. So I think that's good. Yeah, if listeners, if you have thoughts about this news and about the future of the Bond franchise, please let us know. So now I think we're going to start with our short take for F1. Greg, how did you like F1, the movie?
Well, Jen, I loved this movie, and I felt very nervous as I walked out of the theater. So this very funny thing happened where I sat down at 7:00 on the East Coast, and with my AMC 20 and a bit minutes of trailers, I then was getting out just as you were sitting down at 7:00 West Coast. Yep. And so you were texting like, I'm sitting down, like, we'll see. Oh, it's a good crowd. Do I have time to get popcorn? All this. And I'm like, oh man, I can't tell Jen how much I love this movie in case I'm an idiot for loving this. So, and I think when, we'll save yours for in a minute, but I think the right attitude is this is a big screen spectacle movie, and it is a lot of fun. It does not require a lot of thinking. This does not challenge anything about who you are and what your worldview is. This is about very fast cars going very fast on a big screen with loud music. And I loved it. It's such a good time. My crowd was really into it. There are some cheering moments. There are some gasping moments, and my crowd was totally into it. And that just added to the excitement. So this gets a huge endorsement from me. Much like Mission Impossible, this is like another one where it's like, get to a big IMAX with a really good sound system and have a great time. How did you feel about it, Jen?
I adored this movie. I think, and I had a similar feeling where I was walking out of it being like, am I delusional right now? Like, did someone slip something into my popcorn? And that's why I'm like, this is the best movie. But I think for me, the sign that I really loved it was two things. One is that I really was just engrossed the entire time, and I did not care that I knew nothing or cared not about F1 racing. And the second thing was when the movie was over, I stood up and I was sweaty. Like I felt clammy in a way that I don't normally. And so and part of that I think was because I spent a lot of this movie like gripping the arms of my seat and kind of like
awesome.
like sitting forward in a way. Like there was a physical aspect to my viewing experience that I don't normally necessarily have. So and the other thing too is like for like younger me that became obsessed with the Ocean's 11 franchise and loved Brad Pitt, and that was a big part of my love for that franchise. Brad Pitt's performance in this made me so happy, and the whole cast is great, and like Carrie Condon is amazing. There, like Javier Bardem I was like, he has kind of a nothing part, and somehow he is also amazing. So I was like, movie stars are back. Like that's kind of how this made me feel. And that was on top of all the sort of like you're saying, like the propulsive action, the, I don't often use this phrase, but a couple people have thrown around the phrase muscular filmmaking, right? Like that kind of like maximalist, everything's going to be loud and big and in your face. Like all of it worked for me. And again, I went into this not thinking that I would care much about racing. I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I'd say huge win, really took me by surprise. It is kind of, I feel like, a throwback to an older style of movie in some ways. That part of that might be because it's not particularly challenging. Like I agree with that assessment that it's like this movie's not doing anything surprising or innovative or subversive. Like it's not doing anything. It's not taking any artistic risks
Yeah.
necessarily.
Everything innovative in it is technical about getting
Yes.
cool shots and, showing you some incredible footage. But yeah, uh, I always joke with my wife who, likes some movies, has like favorites, doesn't go to the movies, kind of thinks I'm mentally ill for how often I go to the movies, but supports me. And she has always had a soft spot for sports movies. Like, doesn't matter what it is, right? Like, I think there was one on like track teams. There was a cricket one not all that long ago, maybe like a decade now, but it's like whatever it is, it's like a underdog team coming through the ranks and winning or not winning the final match is like, what you're expecting. To me, it's the kind of movie equivalent of the people who watch endless Law and Order, right? There's just something comfortable about like, I know the beats that we'll go through, and then by the end, it's all resolved. And like, a good, well done sports movie is what this is. And, there were a few moments where I was like, okay, I actually don't know what's going to happen next. And certainly some swerves on the race course of this movie. But I do think that, like, in the end, it's just like, silly fun. I have had a great time at the movies this summer. It's been a really strong summer box office season so far. But I will say I don't think anything had me with the like big stupid goofy grin on my face like this did. Maybe that third reel of Mission Impossible. Well, who are we kidding? The like eighth reel by the time that runtime got there. But like only that short sequence, not the full movie. The full movie was a slog, whereas this was a breezy 2.5 hours, which is saying something, I think, these days.
Yeah, it zooms right by. Right? Okay, so I think we've unsurprisingly, we've sort of started creeping into the recommendation algorithm in which we establish the audience of a film. I guess the thing I want to start with, because both of us have I in particular have just pronounced that I was not a Formula One fan going into this movie. Do you think that's important? Like, is this just for everybody? It sounds like we're saying yes, because both of us liked it and we're not experts on Formula One.
Well, before I answered that question, bounce back to you and just explain the crowd you were with, because it sounded crazy. Like nothing else could summarize how much of an outsider you felt like. I feel like.
Yes, absolutely. So when I went in line for the concession stand, because first I texted Greg to be like, I have 5 minutes before the start time. Is this going to be a repeat of my 70 millimeter Sinner situation? And I'm going to be walking in after the movie started if I go wait in line for popcorn. And as I'm standing in line, I'm looking around and I'm like, wait a minute. Everyone's wearing either a t-shirt with a fancy car on it, like McLaren or something, you know what I mean? Like, or what I inferred to be a jersey of an F1 driver. Because it would have like a name and a number, or like, you know what I mean? Like, and would kind of have sponsors on it. Like it looked like not Rusty's or whatever, like, but I can't think of a real one right now. only the animated movie one. But you know what I mean? Like, and so I was looking around, I was like, wait a minute, everyone's here because they're really excited about F1. And I'm like, this must be what it's like when I go to a Star Wars movie. and I just don't realize because I'm part of that crowd. Right. And so, yeah, it was crazy. And I think when I sat down and I looked around again, everyone in my row had some kind of gear on. And I was just like, I feel like I don't belong here. So I don't know. Maybe they really advertise the early screenings heavily to those crowds in some way. You know what I mean? Like if they're like subscribed to like some kind of F1 newsletter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whoever did the marketing seemed like they did something right.
I mean, again, it feels to me like the F1 organization heavily participated in this because some of this must have been just footage from their events. Like they couldn't fake some of the size of these crowds and racetracks and so on.
And
So,
I did read about that earlier
okay.
today. I didn't read like in depth necessarily, but I did find out that the last season of F1 they did join in, and apparently, and this is I have to be disclose my sources. This was like a bunch of TikTok videos that I watched. I'm embarrassed to say that on air. But I wanted to get the feel. TikTok is actually a really good place to get the mood for like how
Mm,
people are feeling about a movie. And so there are a bunch
yeah.
of these TikTokers who were like laughing that either they were like, this movie's amazing, you got to go see it, right? Which is part of the influencer hype that you have to sort of filter a little bit. But there were also a bunch of them being like everyone made fun of Brad Pitt who showed up at these F1 races because they were like,
Mm,
haha, he's just like a Hollywood actor. Like we're the real ones. And apparently people who were in the F1 community were very skeptical and very critical about them making this movie. And now that people are starting to see it, they've changed their mind. They're like, they did a great job. Like the filmmaking's so great.
nice.
And so I do know that they filmed a lot of this when actual F1 races were happening.
Yeah. Well, and so my version of what you're saying is that AMC has not one but two popcorn buckets out, and so I was like 2.5 hours. Daddy needs a soda, so I was waiting. And the way my AMC works now is you touch screen order your soda cup, and it takes like 10 minutes, and then some disaffected teenager comes out and is like 3309 and just hands you a cup. I'm like, this is so degrading for all of us involved. And then you go fill your own cup. You don't. So I'm standing there waiting, and I'm like looking at these helmets. I'm like, what? Who's? Are you kidding me? I mean, they're next to a bunch of unsold Mission Impossible, next to a bunch of unsold Karate Kid, next to it. I'm like, nobody's buying F1 popcorn buckets. And then I was sitting there, in my 20 minutes of trailers, and I was like, oh my god, so many people bought popcorn buckets. There was a couple rows in front of me, and they each had one. Like they bought the pair so they could have them together. And so, and yeah, that's not me. I knew nothing about F1. So I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm not sure that's podcast official yet, but if people don't know, I grew up in New Hampshire. And one of the things we have in New Hampshire is a NASCAR track, which it's like weird. There's one this far north. And so a couple times growing up, I was taken to NASCAR events. Either my dad got tickets through work or, a friend's parent got tickets. And it wasn't for me. I don't demean it. I understand there's like a big culture and a big following. I just was like, for me, I'm like, wait, we have to watch them do this like 150 times. Like I don't even know the number. That's how little I remember it. And of course, NASCAR is not F1. And as I understand it, that is a huge distinction that a lot of the fans would draw. So I'm very foreign to this world. I found myself like half hour into it being like, I gotta find out how to watch this. Like, I want to watch like the real events and see like, is it this exciting? And I think I was relieved to hear you just say that the fans and the community like this film because I thought it portrayed them very well. Like the race kind of spectacle and the flyovers and the bands and the spawns, it all looked really fun and engaging. So so I was very far out of it. The only thing I heard, my wife ended up at a baby shower next to somebody who's a huge fan, and she was like, "Oh, are you going to go see F1?" And they were like, "Absolutely not. Like somebody that old cannot race F1, and here's all the reasons why." And so my wife Rachel then repeated to me about how F1 requires strong neck muscles, and you can't actually do it after a certain age. So it's like all bullpucky. Like Brad Pitt couldn't do it. But then they show them training their neck muscles. And I was like, yes, the neck muscles. I know this. I know this part. So I was faking it immediately with only my like third hand limited knowledge. But yeah, I didn't care that I didn't know it. I thought the movie was really smart about teaching you the game, the sport. Maybe by the end that got a little grating where you have a character saying again, "Oh, well, if we blah blah blah." I'm like, yeah, I know. Like you've covered that, right? Like I get it at this point, but not too much to the detriment. I'd rather them go that way than have me be confused about what's happening.
And I do think that that actually is part of the appeal to the average film goer because I put a question in our outline, but I can't remember where now, about does this count as a process movie? And by process movie, I mean a movie in which part of the pleasure is like feeling like you're entering this other world where everyone's using other terminology and you're kind of like an outsider being like, wow, like this is how they really do this. This is how they print a newspaper, or this is how they, I feel like they're part of the appeal of this movie could be, if you're not already knowledgeable about the racing, right, could be to see, wow, there's actually a lot more that goes into this than I would have thought. And just the fact that each racing team is like 50 people somehow like was really shocking to me. But there is a lot of that where you're kind of learning along with some of the characters as people are explaining things to them.
And yet not in a way that feels like you're being lectured or
right.
like it's like it's not the point. You just learn it as you go. And I thought it was surprising, and you alluded to this when you mentioned the actors. It's surprising how many people kind of shined and how big a cast got serviced in what felt like beforehand it was going to be just a Brad Pitt vanity project. And it's still a little of that, but you know, they do a good job.
All right. Are we ready for spoiler mode? Any other time? Oh, I guess. So I mentioned earlier that the director of this, Joseph Kosinski, is the visionary who brought us Top Gun Maverick, right? And so, if people like Top Gun Maverick, are they going to like this movie? Do you think? Is that a good kind of touchstone?
Yes, I think, it's different things, but I think they clearly brought a lot of the technology that helped them put the actors in the planes right to putting actors in cars. And structurally, it matches quite a bit, even down to like the incredibly chaste love scene where you're like, oh, right, we're not actually going to show that, but a little less awkward than Top Gun Maverick on this one. But yeah, I think I was struck like, well, I would say
spoiler,
particularly the very end of the film, which is not really a spoiler, but I'll leave it blank, where I was like, oh, this is like beat by beat the end of Top Gun Maverick, I think, right to the very end in some ways. So we'll leave that broad. But I think that's a good comp. I would say if you're a sports movie fan, grab this. And, my fear of saying that is that people be like, well, I like sports movies. Okay, I'll grab it on digital. But again, this like the roar of the engines, the music is mixed very loud in a great way where I was like, maybe I do like We Will Rock You, right? And it was a lot of fun to be there. It felt raucous. I'm excited to see what the full box office does for this, because I think if buzz is any indication, this might do pretty well this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully. And in terms of the music, I do feel like there are a couple really great needle drops where it's like so perfectly timed with the action, and the score is by Hans Zimmer, and I do feel like he watched Challengers and was like, I could do that. I could make like a techno
I actually had
infused.
that too. Yeah, there's some driving beats. I had that same thought in the theater, so good. Thank you, Atticus and other
Trent
guy.
Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Trent Reznor, Trent and Atticus to me, because we're good friends.
Okay.
I just can't remember
you're on
their name.
First name basis for most people we talk about. I know. All right, I think we prolonged
the lesser known in the pair and didn't get sorry. Yeah, go on.
Amazing. All right, I think we've prolonged being spoiler free for long enough. So if you have not seen F1 and we're giving a resounding recommendation, go have a great time. Enjoy Brad Pitt smirking and fast cars running very loud and very fast, and come back and rejoin us for the rest of the conversation. So instead of my cut straight to the spoiler, as we said, this movie is very familiar in terms of its plot beats. So, but my first question on here was, why is this movie so good? Why did we love it so much? Let's try to put a pin on that. And I mean, is it just because of the technical aspects of it, or is it, I don't know.
I would just say the movie is very authentically what it wants to be, right? Like, so this is an old kind of hacky example, but there was always this funny disconnect, and this is well talked about territory in terms of video game culture. But like Call of Duty is like a video game where you go like shoot as many people as you can and you go crazy. And then when you die, a little like quote comes up from like, the art of war, and it's like humanity can never be free while war exists or whatever. And you're like,
Yeah.
this is so stupid. Like it's like pretending it's this big, philosophical thing. It's like, no, I just like to come here and shoot Nazis, right? So like it was that kind of the lack of that kind of disconnect that I think made this work so well. This is like, we just want to make a movie about cars driving really fast, and we'll build a bunch of stuff around that, but let's just do that really well. And um like it feels so inauthentic that I'm like so excited about this, because I'm not like a gearhead guy. I feel like I'm pretending, but like it's got the nerd types excited, I think, because it's just like infectious. So that's number one on my list. Is it's just technically beautiful, and it's just like, you want to see things that are fun, let's just have some fun. It doesn't try to be deeper than that.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I think this movie really lets Brad Pitt be Brad Pitt, and kind of unabashedly, you know what I mean? Like, he's really cranking up the charm in the way that they've written the character of Sonny Hayes. It really is that kind of sweet spot of, yes, he is arrogant and incorrigible, and he's, like, thinks he's awesome and doesn't want to listen to other people and thinks he knows better. There's a lot of that in there, but at the same time, he cares and is like caring just enough
Yeah.
to all the other characters that you're like, oh man, like he's reeling me back in. I love this guy. I want him to win. And I think for me, like, yes, I co-sign everything you're saying about the technical aspects of this and how it's just so visually and sensorily pleasurable to watch. I would say the editing is a huge part of that as well. Maybe we put a pin in that and talk about that later. But for me, the underdog story, as kind of cliched as it was, also really got me. I really was like rooting for these characters. You get to know them just well enough, and there's like enough tension, but then enough like tender moments between them where they're kind of connecting with each other, that by the end of it, you really are like, the stakes I think are very high in terms of like, I want them to succeed. But then you're also conflicted because you're like, well, do I want Joshua to actually win, or do I want Sonny to actually win? Like, they can't both win, right? They can come first and second at the best case scenario, which, spoiler, doesn't happen. I do want to mention, actually, now that I'm talking about it, PT, I saw him at work the other day, and he hadn't seen the movie yet, so he was like, do not feel like you have to comment or respond to this at all, but I want to pass along for when you record with Greg that when I watched the trailer for this movie, I am assuming that the end of this movie is Brad Pitt being positioned to win, but then giving up his win so that the younger racer can win instead. And
Interesting.
I was like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything about that. In my head, I'm like, that's not what happens.
No,
they do imply that could happen a bunch of times, or that he'd be willing for that to happen, right?
Look, I'm not here to speak ill of our co-host who's not on, but I also had that feeling. He told me about Ballad of Wallace Island. He's like, yeah, the trailer gave it all away. I can tell you the exact ending of that. And I haven't checked, but I'm sure he did not. Like, I'm sure part of why he enjoyed that as much as he did is because it swerved away from what he expected a little as well. So, yeah, I mean, I actually did feel some genuine tension here because, like you just pointed out, the underdog story is there and it's great, and I found myself totally rooting for it, which is like anathema to everything I believe as a person. Like, oh, I hope this billionaire gets to keep his $1 billion racing franchise. It's like that. I don't care about things like that, and yet I was there, and part of it is the charm, particularly of Javier Bardem, and that, but like, it felt like it was starting on that path. It took a long time for them to kind of claim any sort of victory. That's what kind of shocked me in that. And so even though I knew in the end we'd get the triumph or we'd get that last minute failure, we know now it's a triumph. That like I thought it was going to start a lot sooner, because it does feel gratifying when you're watching an underdog get their first win, and it took a long time. And then the Joshua getting knocked out for a while was a surprise to me as well.
Yeah, that happened way earlier. I assumed that was going to be the end of the movie, where either he like that Sonny would make a different decision because he would flash back to his own blowout accident and be like, I don't want that to happen to this kid. I want to learn. I want him to learn from my mistakes. Like that's kind of where I thought it was going.
Mm.
But then when like, it's probably not even, is it halfway through the movie? Like when does that happen when his Joshua's out?
I think about halfway, if I had to
Yeah.
guess.
It's like the
Hour and a
second
half
act,
or
right?
so. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, like this is a major character and he's just not in the race for several races. Like what's happening? So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's in that sense it was a little bit surprising. So yeah, it's interesting because I feel like on the one hand it is very predictable, but on the other hand I did feel kind of the ups and downs of like, wait, this is happening now.
Well, and I want to link that also to your point about grumpy old man Brad Pitt, which the movie had some fun with, where the guy's like, I don't know, he's wicked old, and the mom's like, he's super handsome.
Yeah.
Which the mom, I'm not going to grab her name
Sarah
fast enough,
Niles, I think.
from Ted Lasso, which it took me
Yes.
a minute. To your point,
She's
she's the
the
therapist.
psychiatrist in Ted
Psychiatrist, you're
Lasso,
right?
right?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So it was good to see her again, and like I'd seen that gag in the trailer, but hadn't placed that it was her. But I, my stepdad, who is oddly prominent in our podcasting of late, but he really loved the old cranky Clint Eastwood movies, particularly I don't even know what it's called, Gran
Gran
Turismo. That's what
Torino
it.
or Turismo, yeah.
Torino.
Yeah.
Turismo is the racing movie. Gran
That's
Torino
right.
is that. Yeah. I screwed you up. But like that's essentially like, we just need a grumpy old man to straighten out these youths. And my stepdad was like, yes, like that's all we need. That would be me, as he, drinks another beer and eats 3 more cupcakes. And it's like, there's a little bit of that vibe going on here, which those were the parts I didn't like so much, where it's like, why are you training like an elite athlete? You should just bounce a ball, right? You like just get out and go for a jog or whatever. And so I didn't love those aspects, but I thought the film handled that, avoided those pitfalls in a major way. And the example I'll give is, there's the pit crew member who drops her drill. I don't. Yeah, sure.
It's a tool of some kind.
Her
The thing that turns
gun.
the tires, right?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So she drops it, she screws up, and he defends her. And that's like one of those moments where you're like, oh, right, because the old guy's got to step in. And then there's a scene just a minute later where she pushes back and says, thank you for what you said, but don't do it again. I was like, and then Brad Pitt doesn't like get upset about that. He's just like, oh, you're right. Like I did that wrong. I was like, that's the step Clint Eastwood never does, right?
That's true.
Where it becomes not
He'd
just
just
who's
grunt
the
and be
bigger
like,
man.
whatever, and then walk away.
Yeah, you don't understand, skirt. So yeah, and so I was like, this movie is like pretty savvy about how it's doing that, even if some of that is a little kind of hokey. And I, again, my very limited understanding about F1, I think that's just all like bullpucky. I think we don't understand how much athleticism it takes to be an F1 driver, and the movie is kind of like, you don't need your fancy lab equipment. That's not it. Just get out and go for a jog. And I don't think that's accurate, right?
Right, but at the same time, so maybe this movie is more nuanced than we are assuming it is. Like, at the same time, I think that, well, 2 things. One is that I think the fundamental tension between Sonny and Joshua is fundamental to this movie's success. And I think that if they had decided to make Sonny, like you're describing, like a more Clint Eastwood-like character, and then there isn't a Joshua, but like there's like a bunch of Joshuas and none of them matter. You know what I mean? I could definitely see a version of this movie where that's true, where it's like there's like, a whole team of younger racers and not just one who's like the hotshot. And I do think that the back and forth. Are you okay?
I am. I'm waiting to say like you're describing Top Gun Maverick, right?
Oh, there you go.
Like
Yeah,
a
it is.
bunch of like nameless young youths. That's not quite right, and that's unfair to Top Gun Maverick. But that's why I keep having a goofy smile, because like, yeah, I think that is the last movie he made. But
that's really
agree
funny
with the point you're making. And I'm sorry to interrupt it.
Oh no, you're fine. So yeah. First of all, I think that tension where they're playing off each other is crucial, and is what allows the movie to have its cake and eat it too. With like, you can have fun watching Brad Pitt be a boomer, but then at the same time, it's the movie is acknowledging that maybe some of his behavior is problematic and that he's working on it. Right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think is that there's like, it's the Sonny's tact strategies, like how he trains and how it's so different than the way Joshua trains. It's not just like a quaint kind of old timer, like more basic, back to basics versus like the young hotshot technology, right? But I think it's also that he's showing him that he is disciplined. Like I think that was kind of
Mm.
what I took away from a lot of those montages where we see both of them training and kind of side eyeing each other. Is that like I think a lot of Sonny's point to as he's mentoring Joshua is that like look like you have raw talent, and if you stay focused, like it's the everything's just noise kind of comment that he makes a couple
Yeah.
times. So I think that's part of it is that he the bouncing of the ball and the jogging, it's to kind of show that he's not paying attention to the noise and that he is really focused and disciplined. Not it's not just the kind of method of training being different.
No, I think that is right. And, because those things are repeated so often, then you get that sense of discipline. And the ice bath, right, which, just seems accurate too, right? Like
Yes.
that an older body needs an ice bath to chill out after. Also, big Ted Lasso vibes there because they were always putting Roy Kent in one of
That's
those. I
right.
feel
Yeah.
like so.
You should have said
But
that recommendation algorithm. We didn't actually say Ted
yeah,
Lasso.
that's actually very true because it's exactly that kind of sports movie just stretched out over 3 seasons, 2 of
Also
which are
made by
pretty
Apple.
good, and one has a Christmas episode for no reason. Yes, yeah, well, and that's part of the narrative around this. I think that if it's gonna struggle, it's because Apple paid an ungodly sum of money for this, and I think it's gonna go down as one of those really bloated productions of the last few years. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning took the kind of brunt of that. I Final Reckoning is pretty expensive, but and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, right? That these were COVID productions that had all those extra expenses, and so their budgets were giant. I almost didn't pause long enough.
Yeah, you just kept going. I'm like, what are you doing? Pause for the music.
So I do think those movies, rightly or wrongly, cost way more. And this, I would say this one has the benefit over those ones of you see the money on screen. You're like, yeah, this doesn't look cheap in any way. And so I imagine that's part of what it did. And I mean,
Do
how
we
many
know
of these
yet when this
cars did
is?
they have to wreck? Sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
that's true. Yeah, that alone would have been super expensive. Do we know when this is going to Apple TV Plus? Like, is it the theatrical run going to be a normal?
I have not heard. Apple is a little cagier, I feel like, and a hard flop could get it there faster, but I think they want this. They're hoping it's Top Gun Maverick. I don't think it's going to be that, but um, I think it'll depend a lot if Jurassic and Superman are any good. But if those are just like meh, I saw it one time and I'm fine. I can see myself going back to F1 on the IMAX if it gets the big screens back. It's a little crowded in July because then you have Fantastic Four as well.
True.
But like an August run on IMAX might draw me back at least. And if they haven't put it on Apple TV Plus yet,
Did you catch that they made a special haptic trailer for your iPhone?
oh really?
Do you know about
No,
this? Okay, so
no.
if you go, because I know listeners now are going to be like, "What is this?" If you, I actually don't know how I found out about this. I must have just seen an ad or something. But if you go to the Apple TV Plus app, right? So it's the corporate synergy. They want you to subscribe to Apple TV Plus for when this is when this is streaming eventually. But
Yeah.
you have to scroll down because they have a normal trailer. There's like the thumbnail for this movie coming into theaters now or whatever, right? Or theaters whatever date it is, and that's the normal trailer. But if you scroll down on the like the homepage a little bit, you will see the haptic trailer, which if you have an iPhone will vibrate
Ah.
with the trailer.
That's
And
awesome.
you have to turn your phone sideways and like yeah, it's really it's very gimmicky. I'm not gonna be like this was a life-changing thing I tested out on my phone. No, but it was kind of fun to be like, oh, this is kind of a funny way to get people excited for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to tell from when we're recording what this is going to do because F1 is huge. And I think this could be a case of big worldwide box office and small domestic box office. But the other corporate synergy, I don't mean to brag, but I'm a T-Mobile customer, and T-Mobile is everywhere in this movie. They're one of the sponsors of the race team, so I think it's on all their headsets. In just about like every shot is the T-Mobile logo. But T-Mobile sent me $5 tickets, so like they're pushing like everybody to go and sign up and get on, and I think that's what you have to do for these non
Yep.
IP original stories. And it stinks. Like, I wish they could just say Brad Pitt racing movie and that was enough to get people out, but you know, it's not. We've seen that, right? Like, original movies are still lagging a little behind. Sinners 100% accepted, because Sinners, although Coogler is basically IP now, which is great and he deserves it, but
Yeah, I
also,
think the closest case to this probably is Barbie, right? Because it's, I mean,
yeah,
F1 is, there's like a little
that's a good
TM thing
call.
next to the F1 on the title, which I'm like,
Yeah,
some marketing person or some graphic designer somewhere is crying because they made them do
yeah.
that, right? But it is IP, but is original in the sense it hasn't been made into a movie yet, right? So I think I think it's paralleling Barbie. But
Or
continue.
Minecraft or
Yeah,
Mario. Like, we're seeing this like IP that exists, brands that people care about, and just haven't necessarily experienced in a movie form. So, um, yeah, and then I just to continue on the initial question of what makes this so good, just a lot of great actors doing parts. So, I was actually a little nervous when I saw Javier Bardem. I most recently saw him on Conan's travel show. So Conan goes to Madrid and calls in a local guide, and it's Javier Bardem. And Javier Bardem, if people think they kind of like him, watch this episode of Conan. It's the first episode of the second season. And he just commits to every stupid thing Conan wants to do. And like, he's hilarious. And there's like, the two of them get matching PJs and spoon in a bed, like that level of like very silly, kind of inane. And so I was like, am I going to like Javier Bardem in a movie now? But it like never crossed my mind again, because it was like, oh no, he's totally serious and stylish.
I never got tired of seeing him stressed out
Yeah.
in this. You know what I mean? Like him being like, "Oh, oh, no, Sonny, what are you doing?" Like I found it hilarious every time, and he really did have George Clooney and Ocean's 11
Oh
chemistry
yeah.
with Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? Like the two of them in that opening scene where he sits down and they're like joking around
Yep.
and like referring to old times and stuff like that. I bought it 100%. It was like, I was like,
Yeah.
I could just watch this. Like this is
And
this
I
is
just want to
delightful.
emphasize what you're saying. That's a high bar. Like, I would put that very high on my list of movie bromances. I haven't built my top 10 movies of the 21st century for the New York Times, but Oceans might have to get on there, because I think it's underappreciated these days, but it's such a good time. And that opening scene in a diner, it's like really cheesy, and then you're like, oh, and here's a cliche sassy black lady, and yet you're like, yes, like she's great, like no notes, like nails it. So those characters, I loved Carrie Condon in this. She's got a little bit of the like, let's just put glasses on her and she'll be a scientist problem, because it's, and all I mean by that is you didn't need the glasses. She could just be her behind a computer, and I would believe she's an aerospace technician. But I think the famous example is Halle Berry in whichever Bond that is, right?
Oh,
One of the
right.
Pierce Brosnan ones.
Die Another Day, I'm pretty sure she's the Bond girl in.
Yeah. But it like, she doesn't get a ton, but like she gets a little bit of an arc, and you hear that she like threw her life away to try this, and then you're like, oh, she's an underdog too, and I'm rooting for her, and so on. And then gosh, the German guy who I think is Casper, is really fun to watch, and just hearing him yell and his accent, and he, I knew him from Killing Eve, just to continue your trend. And then Abdul Salas, who plays Dodge, the kind of head of the pit crew. which so in my other life as a podcaster, I watch a lot of Wheel of Time. He's one of the big villains on
Oh,
Wheel of Time, and people may remember him from Love Actually, because that's what I embarrassed myself on that podcast talking about. Like, no, this is the Love Actually guy. He can't be a bad guy. Yeah, just a ton of that guy, that girl, that human being. I
Shea
don't know.
Wiggum, your
Shea
favorite?
Wiggum. I thought Shea Wiggum was coming back. Right? Did you?
Yeah,
I
especially since his placement in the credits made me
Yeah.
assume that he had an actual part in this movie and not just like a glorified cameo.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
My favorite part of my Mission Impossible rewatch with my wife and kids is Rachel was like, "Who is that guy?" And I was like, "That's Shea Wiggum." And she just said, "He's got a magnificent head of hair." I was like, "He does have a magnificent head of hair."
Yeah, he's in this movie for 5 seconds and he's great. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
kills it.
He feels like a fully formed character.
The Anne Hathaway movie where she's a crazy person with Thomasin McKenzie. I'll look it up in a minute.
Oh, it starts with E.
It had Oscar buzz and then it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Eileen,
yes. He's phenomenal in that. He's Thomasin's father in that, and you're just like, I could watch Shea Wiggum all the time. And I even kind of forgot he was in this, even though I love him. And I just thought, like, it felt like when there was tension with Casper that they might drum him out and bring in like, I know a guy, and like he choppers in.
And then Shea Wiggum comes back.
Yeah.
The only other person I think I recognized. Oh, I think you might have said all of them. I mean, we didn't talk about Tobias Menzies.
Yeah, I don't really know him.
Game of Thrones. Wait, what?
Oh,
he's from. Oh, you don't watch Game of Thrones stuff. That's why he was in Game of Thrones.
The original.
He was a Tully in Game of Thrones, I believe, and he's in You Hurt My Feelings.
Yep.
That Nicole Holofcener movie that Antonio really likes, and then
he's in something called The Crown, playing somebody called Prince Philip. I don't know any of those things. So
what?
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I was trying to find references that you would know. I didn't go straight for The Crown.
That immediately is why that credit stood out to me, because I can immediately see him as Prince Philip. So
okay.
Yeah,
he's very good. So
yeah,
I mean, he's kind of like, maybe we're skipping ahead to something else I had in this outline, but this was mostly joking, but I wrote, is this actually a rom-com and Tobias Menzies is the bad boyfriend villain? Because he does have Pierce Brosnan and Mrs. Doubtfire vibes for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I've already offered a couple things. So I mean, listeners, if you haven't already checked, Jen gave this full 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which unapologetic. I'm here for it. Go for it. I went 4.5 just because there are a few bits of this. I think I didn't feel the runtime, but it did at times feel like there's maybe some steps in this we didn't necessarily need. And I would put Chief on that list. Might be his plot line and how he tried to sabotage the team to try to take it over. And so from my perspective, why that kind of felt a little tacked on is it's like he gets introduced early on, but then it's like the last half hour that they're suddenly like, he's the villain. He's been pulling the strings behind it. It's actually very Ted Lasso. It's like he let the board bring in this guy so that they could fail and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I don't think I really care about this. I want to get back to the Joshua and Sunny kind of bromance of being best friends forever, right? So that would be one I was like, I don't know if I need this, but I do think that there is kind of I mean, it's deliberate that he's messing up all the good chemistry, right?
I think it was worth it purely for the scene in which it's to build. He's there to build up Sonny's character, both in terms of his likability, but also in terms of like the respect that we have from as a character. Because the scene in which he's Tobias Menzies, I'm not going to remember his character's name, but Tobias Menzies' character makes an offer, sort of behind the scenes under the table, to Sonny, being like, "Look, this team's going to lose. It's going to reform, and we'd love to have you be a part of it," right? And then halfway through the conversation, Sonny says, "Wait, you were the one Like, and so that you were the one that forged those documents, right? And that you've been kind of fighting against Ruben. But when he realizes that he has not been loyal to Ruben, has been working against him the whole time, then he's like there. You know, in that moment, there's no way he's going to go for it, right? And
yeah.
So for that moment alone, I feel like it was kind of worth it. It was very satisfying to see Sonny being smart because everyone treats him like he's dumb.
And just a beautiful iPhone product placement where Sony texts him the middle finger, and you're like, "Wow, what a great phone! I should, get those emojis." No cynicism about the corporate product placement side. Like it was so fun, and that's something you look for. I mean, you said it right. You need the bad boyfriend. You need the coach or the guy in the sports movie who cheated, right? Or switched teams to get a better deal, and so it just to me felt like if I really needed him, then I needed more of him along the way. And I know I already praised the like pit crew, redemption story for that girl. I was like, I don't think that necessarily needed to be in the movie. I do like how it blunted the kind of masculinity thing, like I said, but it was like we got a lot of screen time for her where it's like a look at her and like coming into the box and it's like cut to her being like, oh, we got to do it right this time. I'm like, I don't like, we get it. Like it's a high pressure gig and it's a team sport. And I think those things kind of got a little more than they needed, but those would be my main complaints.
She's apparently somebody.
Yes. All people
like,
are
no,
somebody,
I mean like, but I just didn't know. I just didn't recognize her, but people were talking about her like she's a named actor. Let me see if I can remember who she is.
She plays Jodie Callie Cook.
Is that her?
I think.
Yeah, the mechanic with that must be her.
I mean, there aren't a lot of women in this movie, so.
That's true. They cut one out. Did you know about this?
No.
There's another TV actor, Simone Ashley, who's from a season of Bridgerton I have not seen because I've only seen the first season, but she's in one of the later ones. And apparently she was on set for the whole movie. She had a whole plot line where she was like a potential love interest for Joshua.
Oh.
And they just cut her. Like she was at the premiere and awkwardly she's not in the movie at all.
Oh no.
So I think that speaks to what the criticism. This is a supportive comment where I think that kind of shows the seams a little bit of the production that maybe the script they were arguing about, like how to trim the script down and what needed to be here and what didn't, and she was just sort of the casualty of that. So yeah, this movie, this was the product of they already cut stuff out.
It sounds like Mission to me, right? Like that. I think Kaczynski and it's all a little murky, but McQuarrie was around for Top Gun Maverick and doing his thing with Cruise, and they were finding the film in that. I mean, and that movie had the same problem. You see Manny Jacinto in a bunch of scenes. You're like, why is Manny Jacinto in this room and never gets to speak a line? So I do think that is the well, I guess the main fault would be the expense of doing movies that way, but then you end up with this. I heard on Big Picture they were complaining that Vanessa Kirby had a big part cut out of Final Reckoning, right? I don't think she appears in flashbacks in that film, but was going to do something, and then they just didn't find the space for it. So it's a little silly and it's a shame. I did note Simone Ashley is listed as Self in the credits on IMDb, so she must appear at some point in the background of a shot still or something, and they said, we'll just make her the actress. But I think we just had a great discussion. If people haven't heard, we had a great Jaws discussion, and then three of us guest starred on Force Ghost Conversations. And one of the things Anthony asked us about Jaws over there was like, what would this have been like if like the film media was watching the production of Jaws? And it's a very fun kind of, counterfactual to think about. But I think this is a great example of like, sometimes movie making is messy, and if the product ends up being good, you kind of can't complain. I think we were, generous, but noted that Captain America Brave New World, it was cut to pieces and you could see all those seams in really damaging ways. Whereas here you might notice them, but you kind of don't mind necessarily. So, and that's okay. It can be messy. Just give us a good product. Give us something fun to watch.
So we've been kind of mentioning periodically that it's not that deep. Like this movie is a great watch, but at the end of the day is just kind of a stock sports movie. In that sense, do we want to venture to guess what the thesis is?
Thesis, please.
Like, is this movie actually saying anything of note about racing or sports or the ethos of Sonny as a human? Like, you know what I mean? Like what do you think of the thesis of this is, or is there not one?
Yeah. I'm going to pose a question as if I'm on Rebel Base Card and throw that back at you and give you time to think about it, which is like, are you supposed to admire Sonny in this film? I think is an interesting kind of corollary on that. But, what is really interesting, I think, at all times, I never felt like I was watching any healthy people. Like it's just, like a bunch of damaged people doing the best they can to try to make something of themselves. And I felt that like a lesser version of this would have been like a Fast and the Furious movie, like live your life a quarter mile at a time. And it's like, no, that's all silly. And we don't need something like that. I think, in kind of a pure dadcore way, it's like there are just some people in this world who are adrenaline junkies and can't sit still, and so need this kind of crazy thrill. And boy, aren't they fun to watch. Like you don't want to be one, you don't want to necessarily respect them, but you kind of just observe it in some ways. And I think that's kind of my starting barrage on that. So do you think, does the movie want you to admire Sonny, to like think he's got it all figured out, or how does the movie leave you on Sonny?
I mean, they call him a washed up gambling addict enough times that can't possibly be true. I would say that the movie wants you to root for Sonny, but not necessarily think he's the pinnacle of what we should all aspire to. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's less admiration and more empathy. I think, yeah, it's like, it's interesting. It's in this liminal space of it's not quite he's making a comeback. He was always great, but at the same time, was he always great? Right? I think that movie plays with that idea really well. So I just want to I think I want to read a paragraph, which is a series of questions I put in our outline, because I went on a real roller coaster for me about how I should feel about Sonny. So my what I wrote in here was, which was less like functionally for us to talk about in response and more just for me to think through in real time, like what I thought about this character. What do we make of Sonny Hayes as a character? Why does his character work in this film? Or to what extent does it? Not sure. Why don't we hate or resent him? Because a lot of things about him make it seem like we should. Is this too much of a throwback to the old white guy knows everything and has to win everything? And that goes back to the ending. Like, I think the ending PT is predicting before seeing this movie makes a ton of sense. And so it's actually a very interesting and potentially sticky choice to be like, oh no, wait, it's with Sonny the whole time, right? Like, like that. But I do think what makes that work is that part of the point of him mentoring Joshua was for Joshua to get to the point where he would put his ego aside and really put the team first, right? In the most simplistic way, right? Like, and to be willing to let Sonny win and to be genuinely happy about that. I do think that's part of his character arc. But at the same time, and the questions keep going. Hold on. Yeah. So is it like he's the guy who knows everything, or is that not part of the film's paradigm? Like, how much is the movie flattering Sonny's ego versus making fun of him or being critical of his arrogance? How much of this is self-aware, okay, boomer energy versus not self-aware? We already talked about that earlier, that it seems like somewhat self-aware. And why do I love it either way? And is that problematic? So I have a lot of feelings, complicated feelings about this. And I think everything I just questioned, you could also say about Brad Pitt, right? Like this movie star that just like flashes a smile and we're like, you can do whatever you want, right? So
well, and I'm going to just admit on the surface that I'm not an expert on this, but as I understand it, serious allegations have come out that Brad Pitt is, he's got a temper and he's potentially partially abusive to his former wife and children. Obviously, very serious allegations that we take seriously. And that, like, I had that thought when I'm like, oh, I'm all about this movie. And like, I was all about Mission Impossible, and that's a ledger with some problematic items on it as well. So it's really, I just want to make sure we name check that at some point to say like, yeah, it's kind of complicated when you get these older guys that are of this time, but out of this time in certain ways. And like, I think as a society, we've stopped saying like, oh, he's just old fashioned and that's okay. He doesn't have to keep up. And we demand, and for good reason, that these types keep up. And then we're like, oh, look at the funny old man. He teaches those young whippersnappers what to do. I also just want to, I guess this is just Greg making sure this is a serious enough conversation. I want to pull out, you threw White in there. And I did have that feeling a few times because Josh was a young black man, that this did feel a lot like, oh, it felt like Gran Torino, right? Like, let the white mentor guy, teach the black kid how he's supposed to behave. That demeans them both in different ways. But, so like, yes, like everything you just said, plus throw on a bunch of complicated societal social issues. And yet I just found him just to be a very compelling character. So I'm not solving your problem. I'm throwing it back to you. So is it okay? Are we going to jail? Canceled?
I want to say, I think it's okay. And our conversation about this is making me realize that the screenplay is actually a little bit more sophisticated than I would have assumed. Because I think walking out of the theater, that's not the screenplay is not the first thing I'm commenting on to somebody probably, but a lot of the things we're talking about are what makes, and I would say this is true of Top Gun Maverick as well, right? Like the screenplay of Top Gun Maverick helps get us to the point where when Maverick's talking to Rooster, like that actual dialogue is not, breaking any molds or anything like that. But because they've built those characters and their relationship and their tension and their rapport and all that stuff, in a very similar manner to Sonny and Joshua in this movie, by the time we get to the climactic moment where they're like, bro, right? Like we buy it and we are invested in it emotionally. And I think that's hard. That's hard to do when, you got planes going boom and cars going vroom, right? So, I think that's why it works, because of the little moments that we kind of have sprinkled into our conversation, right? Of him being like, my bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you in a position where you looked like you needed help. Also, a lot of his conversations with the Carrie Condon character. Why can't I remember anyone's? These are such huge movie stars that I'm like, I just remember their real names and not their characters' names. Kate. Really? Her name was Kate? Okay.
I didn't remember.
That doesn't sound right.
No, it was Carrie Condon. Yeah.
But anyway, so Kate, like the conversations he has with Kate, she really is the screenplay is making it so that her character is holding her own and going toe to toe and really like holding his feet to the fire and calling out his BS in a way that by the time they actually get together, even though that plot point on paper feels like outdated in a lot of ways, right? It still works, like because the screenplay has done the work. It's put the work in. So I that's my way of rationalizing it. I don't know if you're listening to this and you're like, Jen is delusional and she just wants to have a crush on Brad Pitt. Please tell me. I would like to be corrected.
Could be. One or the other. Well, and I want to just pick out, you shouted out earlier how, Sonny tells Joshua, like, you could be great. And I think in all those relationships you just listed, there's just a baseline of respect, right? And to pick up on the Kate plot line, even when he's thinking like how he wants to talk to her and approach her, it's not actually like, it doesn't start with, I want to flirt with her, I want to sleep with her. It starts with like, I want to talk to her about the car. And his like, oh, well, I'm going to start by pointing out she's done an incredible job getting to be the first female, team leader or whatever, the designer team, whatever the title is.
Technical director?
Oh, nice pull. And so like it starts with this respect and, the conflict with Joshua where it's like, you got to cut out all that noise. That's like right, but it's also wrong, right? Like, we were just talking about a potential opportunity for the podcast, and we saw like, oh, they need to know follower counts to be considered. Like, that's a part of being a modern athlete and a celebrity and an actor and all these things, right? I mean, I'm sure you have heard the same stories on podcasts I have, where it's like people going into auditions and they check their Instagram followers, or they, decide whether to book somebody in a comedy club based on that.
It's
Just
currency.
it's a currency. It's a simple metric for how popular and how many tickets you could sell. And so, the manager even sometimes he's kind of a negative foil, but he's not a sleazeball. He's just like, if I'm going to get you to that next level, we got to do the endorsement deals, and you got to show up to this party. And it's like, that's just part of being an athlete now. And I think it can be stupid, but it's just accurate.
Yeah.
So he respected him, and he's a little bit wrong. And so to me, that just shows like, you're okay enjoying him because he's not a savior figure.
And that indicates that the movie is more interested in the dialectic between Sonny and Joshua rather than the supremacy of Sonny's point of view, right? Yes, he does technically win the race at the end, and he gets that whole, like, he gets to fly again, right? Like, there's that whole moment that is really centered on him as a character and his journey through this movie, and like his whole, like, he flared out his career, did a bunch of stuff he's not proud of, and now is back, and like there's a lot at stake for him personally. But even though that's really what the end is about, I do think that the movie's trying to tell us that they're both right and both wrong about something like the noise of the social media and the promotion stuff. But at the same time, I think Joshua learns, sure, this might be a fact of life that I have to deal with in my career, but it doesn't have to be the only thing I'm preoccupied with, right? Like, like I don't have to do the smile for the camera and go to the club with people I don't know just to make it look cool at the expense of getting ready for the race the next day, right? I think that's kind of the realization he arrives at, is like, well, this isn't everything. I have to balance them.
Yeah, well, and I really, it's like the cheesiest of cheese balls, but I loved Brad Pitt's jogging, and then more and more crew keep joining him, and then Josh was like, I'll take you all for a jog, let's do this. And it's like that to me was kind of the best version of that, where it's like, yeah, he was gonna do some jogging anyway, like do it in a way that builds the team up and builds that connection. That's just like good. Like, it's just like baseline good strategy, and also it's what is right and what is good.
It goes the other way too, because we do see Sonny in the simulation booth, right?
Yeah,
a lesser version of this movie has that character being like, I'm never doing that, I'm never going in there, right? That's
right.
But instead he's slowly adapting.
Yeah.
And they're like, the girl's like, he's been in there all day. Shout out to like that unnamed person who sat behind the computer, and she actually had a bunch of lines.
Yeah,
for someone who like has no part in the like.
She was a girl in a chair. And I say this confessing potential racism, but I think it was more her hairdo. She looked like Margaret Yang in Rushmore. I was like, is this Margaret Yang grown up? Like, it's not the same actress. I could tell that, but I was like, I totally could see her going from like, I helped my genius art director boyfriend in my high school plays to I lead mission control behind the scenes. That it wouldn't surprise me if that group had a bigger plot line, because they appeared a lot in the final montages, kind of building up to it. But yeah. The only other thing I want to note about the kind of F1 of it all, and this might transition us, you promised to talk about editing, so I want to hear your thoughts on the editing, is I do think the movie suffers from the same thing the sport suffers from, where it's like, okay, it's race day, we got all the energy, here come the lights, go, and then 100 laps later, slow. Right?
Oh yeah.
Where it's like 40 laps, and so the film, I would say, had to get creative about jumping time and putting up signals. And I would say it uses an array of tools to do that. It uses kind of movie superimposed graphics. It uses computer screens for the technical teams. It uses television coverage. It's like everything they could do to kind of always telegraph what's going on. Did it work for you? Is that where you'd praise the editing, or how did you feel?
Yeah, I think that was very elegantly done because if you listed many things just now, right? And the fact that those
Yeah.
are all seamlessly stitched together in a way that flows properly is pretty impressive. And I think, was it your Letterboxd review that said like Top Gun Maverick, most people are probably not going to think this is too not see assume this is effortless when it isn't.
Yeah.
That was your
Yeah.
Letterboxd
That
review.
was me.
Okay, yeah. So I think that like that's part of the problem is that it's so seamless and flows so smoothly that I think not many people are going to stop to think about how complicated the editing of something like that is to go back and forth between all those things. For me, it really was the cutting back and forth between the external shots of the race and the sort of like driver's POV, or not even POV because it was facing them, but like the
Right.
getting inside the car, because there were many shots where the camera didn't move out of the like was in the way. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that like the steering wheel or the person's glove or something like that was actually like windshield wipering across the shot in a way which I feel like not a lot of other movies would deem that acceptable. They would just be like, that's messy. That's, you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
going to block the view of the driver or whatever.
Of Brad
So
Pitt's
I
face.
really appreciate that.
That came to mind for me as well because I think I was like 2 hours and 15 minutes into this and I was like, oh my God, Brad Pitt wasn't driving in these races. And like I always like, I didn't think about those technical issues because it just felt natural. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be behind the scenes things. I'm sure he did more than
I mean, he
we
did
could
some amount of
possibly
driving as far as
believe.
I know.
But like I always believed those cars were in active races, and you think about this is just me being like, wow, aren't movies great? But like when there's all those things about a car is chasing him and one has to pass and one doesn't, and doing all those flawless editing tricks you just talked about, but also choreographing two high speed cars doing that move. That's unbelievable, and I think that feels like the most Top Gun Maverick parts of this is that they could do that as well. The editing there, well, we'll get into it, but just phenomenal. And you pretended those actors were flying planes themselves. They were often in the planes, but they weren't flying them themselves. So it was incredible. And I just thought it was pretty stunning how much I bought into this, right? Like it really was. I was like, wow, wait, no, there's no way Brad Pitt was driving a car in a race. How did they do this? And if I go a second time, it might be that.
So
yeah.
I'm on. Well, let me say one more thing about the editing, and then the thing I was just about to say is going to move us into another direction. So, first, let me just say that there's a certain amount of restraint with the editing because the best example probably is it only uses split screen where we see Sonny and Joshua side by side, maybe once, maybe twice,
Yeah.
and a lesser movie that doesn't have that sense of self editing would probably be doing that constantly, and to be like, look, they're both here and they're both talking to each other, right? And so, and also the cutting back and forth between the crew, right? The folks with the head, like Carrie Condon and all the other characters with the headsets. I think that was really elegantly done because there were just enough close-ups on them when they're like, "What are you doing, Sonny?" Right? Or C is for chaos, or C is for combat. That whole bit. I think when it premiered, she was like, you believe Brad Pitt's close-ups on just his eyes because he actually is scared. Like he is like, I am actually going to drive this car very fast and I don't know how I feel about that. And that's helping his performance was kind of her argument. And so and I've seen tons of press. There was a big deal where Tom Cruise like surprised Brad Pitt on a red carpet to be like, my brother and doing your own stunts, and they're hugging. And so there's this interesting parallel, and part of that is because of the Joseph Kosinski connection, right? I'm sure like that's why they're able to, that's why that's part of the press tour for this movie. But I just think it's a really interesting parallel. So like how much of that outside context of the Tom Cruise Top Gun Maverick factor is going to help this movie? Or help Brad Pitt, or like, is this Brad Pitt's thing now? Like I think there was an interview where he was like, as long as I don't have to jump out of a plane, I'll work with Tom Cruise or something. You know what I mean? Like, so he has a limit. He just wants to stay on the ground, but he'll do his own stunts, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think?
it's really interesting because they are 100% the same class of actors. And yeah, I would never have linked them. The press tour did remind me they're both in Interview with a Vampire, right? Like they
Oh,
have
right.
starred together. And there's a little buzz that they might reunite because that property has gotten hot again because of a TV show.
The show. Yeah.
So like, oh, they do know each other, and they certainly made it look like they're best old friends on that red carpet the other night. I am fascinated with what Tom Cruise is up to because he's just Mr. Movies now, and I want to believe it comes from a very genuine place of he just wants to save theatrical movies, but like I don't know, like when he's out there helping promote Ballerina from the world of John Wick, which he was like, "Oh, you can go see two great action movies. How great is it?" He was quoted in the press today being like, "When one movie wins, we all win." Like he's running for mayor of Hollywood, which based on the Olympics closing ceremony, I think he already holds that office, right? Like I don't think he really needs to be doing this. It's interesting in the context of all that he just got announced as winning an honorary Oscar this year. He and Dolly Parton, just what an Oscars it would be if they invited those people to the main ceremony. I mean, they're invited, but they don't
Maybe
get to
they'll
give their
start doing
speech.
it now, so Tom Cruise
I
can
mean,
parachute
it
in.
seems silly to do anything else if you could get Tom Cruise giving a speech. But like it's very interesting that is going on. I do think, you know, 100% it's harder for women, right? When women get to the mid 30s and they're not the ingenue type anymore, Hollywood forgets about them. But there's also a dead zone for men in Hollywood. It's smaller and it's, you know, it's more privileged in every way. But like when you get out of the like striking leading man, and we can agree Brad Pitt looks like garbage in this film. He's no longer a striking leading man. But like, you know,
Libel.
before you're at the silver fox stage, because Brad Pitt is older, but he hasn't gone gray fully, right? He's got some salt and pepper, but more pepper, I would say, than salt. I mean, he was blonde, so I don't know the equivalent. But I do think there's a dead zone there, and Tom Cruise kind of cracked that one way to do it is to do crazy stunts and do these action movies. I think Brad Pitt is just kind of following that playbook, and it seems to have worked out this time. It's funny to me that attached to this movie and every other movie I've seen, and I've seen a lot of movies, is the Naked Gun trailer. And that Liam Neeson's kind of in that zone. I would imagine he's a little older than these two. And he's gone to the like, I just need to make a fool of myself and wear a schoolgirl's outfit on the big screen. And then, like, you know, no disrespect, he looks like he's having fun in that movie, but I'd rather be driving an F1 car if I were a leading man than doing that. So I think it's a tough moment in a career to manage. And so to see Tom Cruise do it so smoothly, I can totally see Brad Pitt running that playbook.
You can say Harrison Ford has done that to a degree as well, but that's more with his real life being a pilot and saving people on mountains and you know what I mean, like that's part of his late stage persona, and so I wonder if that also kind of helped him have staying power after a certain age, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I would say, with all due respect to Mr. Ford, obviously, he also had that dead zone, right? I think he's on the
That's
other
true.
side of it now, but he had that, you know, I've gone very
The
far
second he
down
got
the
that
Harrison
earring.
Ford. Yeah,
That's when it
the earring.
started.
I've been down deep into it, but I never have gotten in his filmography. I've never gotten to Hollywood Homicide with Josh Hartnett. You're like, oh, he did some weird stuff, like late
I think
90s,
I've seen
early
that.
2000s. So, but like, you know, I think Harrison Ford is certainly that age older, but should. I like the comp of his landing a plane on a golf course being his version of this.
All right, should we do a quick Oscars watch?
Yeah.
So I think the closest comp that people will make, and I'm sure people already have before me, for awards chances would be Top Gun Maverick, right? So because the Kaczynski factor, because of the, like we just said, the do your own stunts, Brad Pitt is like Tom Cruise now. factor. So, as a refresher, Top Gun Maverick was nominated for Best Picture, Adapted Screenplay, Original Song, and that's something we haven't mentioned. The soundtrack for this has like 3 potential Oscar nominated song. Like there's an Ed Sheeran song. There's some younger musical artist that I don't know that the internet seems very excited about doing a song. Like there's a bunch of songs.
Yeah.
The end credit songs or related songs during the movie that could be eligible. But anyway, so best original song, that was Lady Gaga. Sound, editing, and visual effects. It won only sound. So how much of this is likely to repeat, if any, for this movie, do you think?
I hope this movie does very well. I expect it will be well liked. Its Letterboxd and IMDb scores are solid at the moment, but we are still mostly pre-release. It can't be the phenomenon of Top Gun Maverick, and I think everything you just listed would not have happened if Top Gun Maverick was like a $200 million movie instead of a $70 billion or whatever it ended up making. So I think it can't match that. So I think sound and editing are inevitable. If I'm keeping it 100, I pre-banked with all of you that I thought Warfare was going to win best sound because the sound in that movie is insane. Like, I felt physically different after sitting there for like an hour and a half of booms and pops and guns and so on. And I think when I said that, you said, whatever is loudest wins. And that seems like it's less sophisticated in some ways, but I still will stand by that prediction. So I think it'll be nominated for sound. I don't see a screenplay nomination here.
I remember that being kind of surprising.
Yeah.
When nominations came out during this year, which was 2023?
Yep. It's
okay.
You put it in the document.
Oh, so. I did. Oops. I just forgot.
So I guess my question back to you, I took a lot of the technical stuff. Brad Pitt, is there a shot or?
The problem is he's already won an Oscar. So I think the prevailing wisdom will be, he's got one, so we don't really need to do it for this.
Yeah.
Even though he's quite good, I don't think I think if Tom Cruise has had to wait for an honorary Oscar, I don't think Brad Pitt's getting nominated for this movie, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just not the type of role that's going to get him nominated. And add to that he's already not only been nominated for another film, though that was supporting, and he would be actor for this one, so it would be a little bit different. But I think people are going to be like, oh, he's already set. We don't need to factor him into this. So, but the thing is, oftentimes sound and editing are key categories to then get you a spot in Best Picture. So my kind of question is, does this have a shot? And I think the answer is going to be no, but does like what you're saying, does it have a shot at those 1 or 2 blockbuster spots, right? So like the weird thing is that there's another Avatar movie coming out the year this was nominated for Best Picture. The other blockbuster was the last Avatar movie. So, but I think between Sinners and other movies that are going to be coming out, I think it gets edged out probably from one of those spots. But what do you think?
It's a really good, fun question to debate in, let's call it July, because it's almost July.
Right.
I think you're right that at most there's 1 or 2 spots for a blockbuster in the 10 Best Picture nominees. If Sinners doesn't get in, then Oscars So
we
White
riot?
Like ruined everything for all of us. So I think Sinners is a lock. So for F1 to get the other one, and it's also really fun to have this conversation where we don't know the box office at all. Like, you and I were very positive. I would expect the cinema scores to be very high on this. The audience reaction scores would I assume be very strong. My crowd seemed to love it. It was Joshua's Crash, where when the car went up in the air, I haven't heard gasps like that in the theater. It was like, and then it was like still could hear a pin drop. It was like, okay, so we're not just here for the cheers. We're like really engaged in this. So F1 would have to do insanely well, and then Avatar would have to tank, or if not tank, it's just like, okay, Avatar is now for Avatar people. And I would also say Wicked would have to way
Sure.
underperform. I think those are the two that probably have the safest shot at the other blockbuster position, if there is another blockbuster position.
Right, and it
then
might be a strong enough year otherwise, right? Because we're saying all of this speculating before the Fall Film Festival season and where the real awards contenders entered the arena. So, there might not be even room for two blockbusters.
Yeah. I don't see anything other than those two movies performing that well. I mean, there are a couple. I'm gonna forget the title. Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, or is that Donald
That sounds
Trump's
right.
bill?
The Coconut movie with Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie. So you got two really well pedigreed actors doing something kind of big,
previously nominated.
And so that could, if it somehow overperforms, like could sneak into some. It looks weird.
I just don't know how commercial that movie is, because Kogonada has not made a mainstream movie previously.
Yeah.
I've seen After Yang. I haven't seen Columbus. I think it's his other movie. But neither of those were really expected to be commercial at all. So, but I think this one's being marketed a little bit more and part of that's because of the casting, though Colin Farrell was in After Yang and was very good in it. But yeah, it looks like a weird, a surreal, we don't know what's reality, we don't know what's fantasy, kind of, but it's also like a rom-com,
kind of Eternal Sunshine-y, maybe.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
So I don't know. I think this one is a very big long shot, but that's also okay. I am very curious if this does poorly at the box office. I think Matt Bellany has gotten me thinking, how long does Apple stay in the movie business? Because they've put out a lot of very, very expensive movies and not made a lot back. It's always an open question of why they're in the movie business and what they're looking to get out of it. But I don't know. It's so funny to me because, my T-Mobile phone membership, again, I'm sorry to brag, but I am a T-Mobile customer. They pay for my Apple TV and have since I signed on. So I never think about subscribing, unsubscribing. I have Apple TV
always have it
all the time. And so I really, I kind of step out of the horse race of how important is it for Apple to get subscribers and so on. And I will maintain, I don't watch a lot of television, but Apple TV is the highest quality that I've seen. Hits per shows offered, right? It may offer fewer shows than a Netflix, but I've never watched something on Apple TV I thought was bad. So I don't know.
It might just be the corporate synergy. That's this is just feeding into their other departments, right? Because we mentioned I mentioned earlier the haptic trailer, but it's also I got advertised, if you buy your tickets with Apple Pay, you'll get $10 off or something like that. And then but that was I got excited and then disappointed, because then it was well, if you buy 2 tickets, I'm well, I'm going by myself. So sorry. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Apple. But then I got an email today being thanks for using Apple Pay. Here's your free popcorn. I'm what? That wasn't even promised. What?
Wow.
So you know what I mean? There, it's part. Maybe it's just they don't actually care if these movies don't do that well. But 2 points of information that are relevant here. One is, if we think about the last Apple TV movie that Brad Pitt did, I think was Wolves.
Oof.
That went straight to streaming, right?
Yeah,
barely.
But also, we were told it was,
and they canceled the sequel. Right?
they told us in the same announcement it was getting a sequel and going straight to streaming. And I think everybody was like, that sequel's not real. And it turns out the sequel wasn't real.
So thinking about that, that's interesting that now with this movie, Apple's involved, but it's getting the opposite treatment, kind of. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then maybe my second point was the Apple Pay thing.
Well, I like your point about branding, though, because so they gave Apple TV to everybody for free 1 weekend in February, I think. And the first text I got from my mom is like, Apple TV was free, so I watched Wolves with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. It was awesome. And so like it was not awesome. I love you, Mom, but it was not a very good movie. It was a reminder that like Apple wants you to associate Brad Pitt. Like, you know, my mom saw, oh, I have this free thing this weekend. Who's here? Oh, I love these stars. I love the Ocean's movies, so I'm gonna pick that up. So, you know, and you know, Napoleon is a prestige thing, right? You know, Joaquin and you know, everybody involved in that.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of absolutely right. Like, I think there is a niche to be kind of what HBO used to be, and HBO probably still is for television, but like that kind of prestige brand, make it feel like
Weren't they involved in Coda? Like, weren't they the streaming service that was?
I think they bought and distributed it, but I don't think they produced it.
Okay, so but still, like
yeah, it was a big win. I think that I think that's when I first got Apple TV.
Really embarrassing for Netflix. I remember.
Yeah. Do you know this thing? So when the original Knives Out movie came to theaters, Rian Johnson put out a recording that was his commentary track that you were supposed to put in your iPod and go to the movie theater and play as it started. It was awesome. And one of the things he revealed in that commentary is that they had licensed the iPhone for the movie, and everybody in that movie could have an iPhone, but not Chris Evans. And Apple had a policy at the time, which was we don't let murderers or villains use iPhones. And so it makes me laugh anytime I see an iPhone in a movie, period. Doesn't matter what genre movie. I'm like, well, they're not the killer. Like, it's like a rom-com, but I'm like, well, Dakota Johnson's not the killer. Like, she's got an iPhone right there. And so you know, obviously, I think they've relaxed that rule a little now, but it is funny. Like, I really want to check if that scummy boardroom guy has an iPhone now. If that's the lie.
What's he receiving that bird on?
That was the one Android phone in the film.
I wish I'd known this before seeing the movie. I would have been paying attention for that. So yeah, I guess yes. I think it's a long shot. Maybe a technical category or two would be kind of its best day. I just think it's really interesting because at the end of the day, this movie really is Top Gun Maverick, but with cars instead of planes. If you're being like reductive about it, you know what I mean? So it's interesting to see like what to think about. Well, if this doesn't get any Oscar traction, like why would that? What is it about it that's different than Top Gun Maverick? Maybe it's just the year, it's the box office, it's the Tom Cruise factor, it's the IP nostalgia factor that Top Gun Maverick was a legacy sequel, right? Like, and this isn't. So I don't know.
It seems stupid to bring this up now so late, but another good comp is Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, half this movie is about beating a Ferrari, right? And that's like pure dad core. So and I say that not for my age dad, but for my dad's age dad who would love that. But like you know, it feels a lot like this. And what was the Adam Driver also did a Ferrari movie.
Just Ferrari, I think it's called.
Just Ferrari. No Ford V. So this could fit into that line too and get some.
Greg, you know who directed Ford v Ferrari?
James Mangold, director of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
That's how you know it's late when I'm like willing to do that.
Also, recently learned that Tracy Letts was horribly afraid while doing those scenes. He shared that on Big Picture, I think. Like,
oh wow,
they were all used to driving cars like crazy, and he was very afraid. Yeah, very very a solid movie, right? And so we could see another trip like that. I'm excited to see what this does because I really question mark, right? And we don't get a lot of question marks. We kind of know usually through tracking what things are going to get. I'm sure there's tracking data out there, but it feels like so where I'm recording, it's been oppressively hot. And on my Monday night, I think it was like 99 when I got to the mall for my 7 o'clock screening, and the lobby was jam full. And it was very clearly like a huge number of people had just said like, I'm just going on Monday night. I just need to get in the air conditioning. What's playing? And so it was not a sellout at this one, but this one didn't have the benefit of the marketing, right? I think people were probably still like, oh, I heard How to Train Your Dragon's good, and so on. So I'm really curious to see if the heat wave holds, how things are going to go this weekend. But I suspect it will go really well. And I think there'll be more repeat customers than some of the other ones this summer.
Well, Greg, I think we are approaching our final lap. Tell the fine folks where they can find you, what you're up to.
Well, if I am the caution car to your race, people can find me online generally at Ion Cannon. That's primarily on Instagram and Letterbox. It's so late I forgot what Letterbox was called. What am I working on Letterbox right now? I'm trying to keep up. I am very close to finishing the AFI 100 essential movies, or whatever that list was called last time. So I watched Nashville today, which was awesome. And I've been tracking a few more of those kind of old classics that I've somehow never caught up with. And then people can follow the show, all the places I mentioned earlier, because this blurb is not in our outline and I don't remember the things PT usually says.
Oh, I think he just says the social media and email address.
You heard me. Go back to the beginning if
Sure.
you forgot it. But we appreciate you all. We appreciate those of you who engage with us, who send us messages, and who like our social media posts. We are not the biggest game in town, but we have a lot of fun, and we really appreciate. I actually haven't mentioned this to you, Jen. I got multiple text messages about people who loved the Jaws episode and how good Sarah Hastings was, and I forwarded them to her. So we're looking forward to more guest take reviews, long take guest list. I forget what the sub brand
guest
is.
List, the long.
And we're hoping for more movie fun. We are deep into summer blockbusters, but there's still a few biggies still to come. And a recent fan on Instagram said he can't wait to hear what we think about Fantastic Four. So Team Marvel will be back in between my vacations. Jen, where can people find you when you're not seeing Fantastic Four or other Pedro Pascal projects? Because that man's everywhere.
I was going to say, check out our review of The Materialist, which I believe will be out. It's not out at the time of this recording, but should be out before this episode. Hopefully. We'll see. Maybe I ask you that the second we hit stop record. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchakchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI. And you can find me on Letterbox at Qui-Gon Jen. And I just want to give a shout out to, we did a Jaws episode, but Force Ghost Conversations also invited us to do a Jaws anniversary episode. I just recorded today on Force Ghost Conversations a Jaws 2 episode because I had never seen Jaws 2. So lots of great Jaws coverage for the 50th anniversary. So if it all appeals to you, check those episodes out. All right. Box, Greg. Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You'll also receive written reviews of new films with Oscar buzz, as well as any new installments of prop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.